Guys, this award season 2026 is, how do I put this? Too damn long. Let's wrap it up. Welcome back to the garage. Gerald here with you, of course. Every Thursday, leading up to the Academy Awards, power rankings here on the channel. So if you're seeing this when it was released, it's Thursday or shortly thereafter, hopefully. And it is before we get the Screen Actors Guild or the Actor Awards winners, which will be on Sunday, March 1st. I'm recording this on Tuesday, the 24th of February. In full disclosure, so we just got the BAFTAs. They just happened a couple days ago. We got the winners from that. I did a full reaction and recap to the show as well on my channel on Sunday. I'll tag it on this video for you, but you can find it under my awards season playlist. Now, the final Power Rankings video will be next week, and that will be after we have all of the major precursors with the exception of the PGA. Let me show you the remaining calendar. I usually show you the whole month, 30-day cumulative, but I'm just going to kind of hone in on what we're looking at over the next like 10 days or so, which is going to be a lot of information that's going to hopefully make things a little more clear, but there's also the potential that it could blur it even further, especially with certain races. I'm dropping the power ranking. It'll be on Thursday on the main channel, which ironically is also when Oscar voting opens for the winners of the Academy Awards. So that's on Thursday the 26th. They obviously just saw the BAFTAs, right? So there's a 3-day gap between the BAFTAs being awarded and Oscar voters to start casting their ballots. Another kind of interesting niche on this calendar is that SAG voting for the Actor Awards is still open, and that closes this Friday, the 27th. So they also were voting while the BAFTA winners were announced. In fact, they've been voting for quite a while. I think it was like a 2-week window or something like that. When Oscar voting is open, we'll be getting the PGA winners, which will be this Saturday coming up. And then, of course, like I said, on Sunday, we will get the results of the Actor Awards, or the previously known as the SAG Awards, the Screen Actors Guild, which is basically on SAG Ensemble and all the major acting categories. For the most part, the only major precursor that we won't get to factor into any of my quote-unquote power rankings is the WGA. But since there's so many films that are, or screenplays I should say, that are ineligible there for various reasons that frankly I still don't really understand, it's not a huge like tell anyway. Plus, if there's any categories that are locked up on Academy night, I think it's actually both of the screenplay categories, and those are going to be the first couple slides that'll be really quick today. If you haven't watched these videos before, this is expected to be like objectively like who's in the lead for these top of the line categories. Now, some of them are so much a toss-up that really you can't really say. So I did guess and put some abstract factors into my rankings, but these are not necessarily my predictions. Now, if it varies or goes off path from what the power ranking is, I will talk about that, and I will have the little Oscar statue on the names or movies for my personal prediction if I was doing it right this second. Also, don't forget, you can always follow me over on the Award Expert app as I try to update that at least weekly for all the categories at the Oscars and all the other major award shows. I will touch on a couple of the races at the end that I think the BAFTAs either enhanced our clarity or maybe made it a little more confusing. I'll touch on them, but I won't have like a power ranking slide necessarily. Let's get into it. All right, so first up, like I said, these are going to be so fast. In fact, I don't even know if I need to give a commentary. The Oscar you see there next to One Battle After Another for PTA and Adapted Screenplay, this is the winner. I mean, what else do I need to say? I mean, he just won at the BAFTAs. He hasn't really lost much on the circuit, especially televised. In fact, I don't think he's lost a televised award this season. So I don't expect any kind of Hamnet upset or anything like that. Very similar commentary when you're talking about original screenplay. This is Ryan Coogler's. I also really am pulling for him, even though Sinners is not my favorite among this group. The screenplay probably is, the uniqueness, the inventiveness of it, and just pulling for Coogler as a dude. Like, I just think he should have this. I really do. All right, so here we go. Let's talk about these. So first of all, I'll start by saying it's so crazy to me that the lead actress, particularly, every year that category seems to be like the most up for grabs. It's always like a roller coaster, or like the first half of the season is leaning one way, then somebody comes in the second half of the season and kind of takes over the narrative. Sometimes there's even a third person that, like maybe a spoiler. Like last year actually is a perfect example because Demi Moore seemed to be in the driver's seat, especially after the Globes. And then Mikey Madison came on late, right, with the BAFTA. And then the whole time, Fernanda Torres was kind of lurking there, probably confidently in that number 3 spot, just waiting to spoil if the two of them were battling it out, splitting votes. However, this year, the supporting races are like, what the fuck is going on? Which I love, by the way. I absolutely love the chaos. I love the mystery around it. We don't know what's going to happen. I mean, people are going to say they do, and I'm going to try to tell you what I think is going to happen, but we just don't know. And even what's funny is even after we get most of these precursors that I was showing you guys at the top of the video, we still might not know. When I did this power ranking video probably 3 weeks ago, maybe 3 or 4 weeks ago, I put Wunmi Mosaku from Sinners as my pick to win the Oscar. And I had her on the power ranking at like number 4. And everybody's like, you know, not everybody, but a lot of people were like, Wunmi's not going to win. Why would she win that? What do you mean? What's this? What's that? So then the next week, I still had her as my winner, and I explained a little bit further as to how I thought she was going to do it. And really the first stop on that kind of path was the BAFTA. She had to win that, and she did. All right. So she did bump up in the power rankings for me, and she's still my prediction. Now, the Screen Actors Guild could do something to put somebody else firmly in the lead and really maybe close as a sure thing as you could be. That would have to be Teyana Taylor, though. So this is being recorded before the SAGs, of course. If Teyana wins there, along with the Globe win that she currently has, she's probably the Oscar winner. She's definitely what I would be predicting at that point. If Madigan wins there, I don't know that I would be as confident to predict her to win the Oscar for Weapons, even though she would have 2 televised precursors as well, with the Critics' Choice and then the SAG, hypothetically at this point. But the Critics' Choice, first of all, is not a huge indicator in terms of crossover with voters. And also that movie was loved critically, right? So it kind of makes sense that she got it there. When you get to the Oscars, there's no other nomination for Weapons. And I know I've been saying that every week on these videos, and I'm not the only one that's been saying it. That's just sometimes a tough hurdle to overcome when you're being voted broadly across the Academy. If Weapons doesn't have any support from other branches, logic would tell you that Amy Madigan could win, but it's just going to be a steeper hill to climb. And that's even with the Screen Actors Guild win. Okay, because her movie is obviously not going to be anywhere near the strongest because it just has the one sole nomination. Whereas a movie like Sinners, and of course One Battle After Another, you know, those two are, nobody's going to ever argue the strength of those two films. I'm going to talk a little bit about my basket on the last slide of this presentation today, which is something I've never introduced this year. I talked about it a lot last year with Nora and some other stuff that ended up coming to fruition. But I have an analogy where each contender has a basket when they arrive at the Academy Awards. There's already stuff in it, right? So to give you that analogy and just make it brief. So if it was Amy Madigan, for example, she's showing up at the Oscars with her little basket, and it already has Critics' Choice in there. A little, you know, whatever, jelly bean, I don't know, whatever you want to call it. That was weird, I'm sorry. And then let's just say, for sake of argument, she also has the SAG win in there. That's in her basket, okay? Is that enough in there to get her on a pass to get on the stage for the Oscar in that category? You know, usually Best Picture is the one that you're really looking at that basket and try to piece that together. We'll get that in a second. If Wunmi Mosaku can somehow win the SAG, or if anybody other than Teyana Taylor can win it, including Madigan, I think Wunmi still has a path to the Oscar, and that's probably who I will predict. Now, I will definitely 1,000% predict her if she wins the SAG, and you should too. That is a combo that's deadly. The BAFTA and the SAG is like, I don't know the percentages, but that's not a minimal amount of crossover there that you could gauge what the Academy voters are thinking or going to do. So this is all hypothetical. As you're watching this, the SAG's in a few days. It'll be a little more clear. But when I do this video next week, if Teyana wins, she's my pick for the Oscar. If anybody else wins in this category, the SAG, I'm probably picking Wunmi or maybe Amy Madigan, if I can be swayed mentally to figure out overcoming that sole nomination weakness there. I'm actually predicting both movies, Sinners and One Battle, to get an acting prize. Where I think One Battle is going to get their acting prize is likely from Sean Penn for One Battle After Another as Colonel Lockjaw. I just moved him up to my number 1. All right. You know, I had him down lower. He won the BAFTA kind of shockingly. I did not expect him to win that. I know a few people probably predicted him, and that's great, and I'm not talking about the merit of the performance because obviously it's stellar and deserves everything it gets. But, you know, you factor in like his personality and, you know, a lot of people seem to not really like him. I mean, I don't know, but that's what I hear. He's not that much of a promoter of his stuff. He doesn't really like the award system. He's been vocal against the Academy specifically. You know, they've already given him 2 Oscars on top of that. I've seen all kinds of stuff around Sean Penn, you know. Now, the performance itself, if this was just a performance-based award, I don't know there's anybody stronger in this category from just what he did with the craft of acting in that film. But of course, there's a lot more that goes into it, and you guys know that. You should know that. So I'm predicting him to win the SAG, which I was already doing. You know, I've been doing that for like 2 months because I feel like of this group, especially since Delroy didn't get in over there with his narrative at the SAG, I felt like with this group that he was the most SAG-friendly. You know, veteran actor, the showiest performance, all the kinds of stuff that they go for. Stellan not being nominated there, Jacob Elordi being a young up-and-comer, they don't tend to award all the time at the SAG. Benicio is great, and he also could be a winner at the SAG, which would really shake things up. And then Delroy not there either. So, you know, I think it's either Benicio or Sean Penn as far as a winner for the SAG, and I think whoever wins that is probably who wins the Oscar. So right now I'm going for Sean Penn because if he wins that and he has the BAFTA, he's definitely in the driver's seat for the Oscar. Now, what a lot of people have been saying, people I know personally, people hit me in my comments, is that Delroy could win this, which I'm not saying I disagree with. He absolutely could win it. I hope you guys realize that is a kind of rare, like, make-a-wish thing. I mean, you know, hold your eyelash and blow it into the wind and hope that it lands on the moon. I mean, kind of situation. And I'm not trying to be, you know, any kind of way, but Marcia Gay Harden, the analogy's been thrown out there, and I didn't do the research of how many times that may have happened, but I don't think there's very many. That might actually be the only one. I'm not sure. So we're talking 98 years. I mean, that's not a great percentage of like possibility. But I will say that it is possible because Sinners is obviously strong. I mean, we're not going to refute that. And Delroy is beloved, you know, and he missed for Defy Bloods, has never had an Oscar nomination. Myself included, there was nothing anybody was more happy about on nominations morning than him getting the nod, kind of surprisingly. So if Sean Penn wins, I think he's just too strong to overcome what that would seemingly tell us on paper. And I do think he's going to win it. I've been thinking that for several weeks. So when he won the BAFTA, I don't know why I would change that. I feel like that makes my argument even stronger that he was the winner at SAG. So that's probably what I'm going to stick with when I do those predictions. Like I said, they'll be out tomorrow. This one's going to be real easy. Jessie Buckley sweeping, and she continues to sweep. I told everybody back in like June or July that she was going to be sweeping, and here we are. So she's not going to lose. I highly doubt she'll lose the SAG. I would be shocked. And even if she does, I think she still wins the Oscar. So Rose Byrne has a shot at the SAG. They love that narrative, that showy performance. You know, so I could see that happening. Kate Hudson also has a narrative. She was a surprise nomination. She's adored. A lot of pull in the industry, right? So that's also an upset possibility at the SAG. But my point being, even if Jessie Buckley didn't sweep and she lost at the SAG, she is too strong of a performance and too strong of a basket. You guys know, remember I told you about the basket. She's not going to lose the Oscars. When it comes to lead actor, not as simple, right? Not as simple. I switched Leo and Ethan Hawke and the 2 to 4 spot there in the power ranking. You know, it's funny because neither one have any really televised heft yet. Really, nobody does except Timothy Chalamet, you know, and then Robert Aramayo, but he's not in the Oscar 5. So because of that, I'm leaving Timothy at number 1. You know, he's the only one that really has a basket right now with anything in it, right? But I said to myself, you know, Ethan Hawke is potentially the SAG winner. I don't know what I'm going to do there for predictions. I really don't. I want to predict Timothy because I think he frankly should win it this year, but he just won that award. You know, they've never given it to back-to-back into the same category, you know, and so this would be the first time that would ever happen. So I go to myself, is that legitimate, like the Bob Dylan performance, Marty, are those two worthy back-to-back? And I go, yeah, they are kind of, really. So it's not that crazy from like a merit standpoint. So I'm probably going to stick with Timmy because that's my guy, as you guys know if you watch my channel. But I do think Ethan Hawke is surging without the wins, which is strange. His narrative and hype around him as an actor, as a person, is kind of creating a surge for him. And not even a ton of people are really talking about that movie, Blue Moon, necessarily. They're just talking about him as an actor and his presence in Hollywood. And, you know, Robert Aramayo, who won surprisingly at the BAFTA, shouted him out specifically. And they showed him on camera, and he was getting emotional. And he leaned over to the person he was with. He said, man, that was better than winning. Robert Aramayo thanking him and talking about how he mentored him 10 years earlier. I mean, I cried, you know, touching stuff. And I think the point of the story here is that everybody loves Ethan Hawke. That's what the surge is coming from, which is really, frankly, kind of cool, but also kind of surprising from what typically happens on the circuit. Then you have somebody like Leo, who's also adored, but he has an Oscar, right? And multiple nominations. Whereas Ethan Hawke's missing that piece of that Oscar trophy. Adds a narrative to him. I also think Wagner Moura is It's really funny to me, actually, as a big fan of Brazilian cinema now, and especially in the last couple of years. It's really funny to me that Wagner is like Fernando Torres, almost to a T this year in the race, because he's quietly sitting there in that like middle spot, literally waiting to pounce, just like I think she was last year. So if you have a bunch of people wanting to reward Timothy for his first Oscar, I was going to say finally, but that always sounds weird to me because he's 30. But anyway, then you have a bunch of people that are like, I don't know, I want to give Leo his second Oscar. He should definitely have that by now, which I agree with, by the way. Then Wagner Moore is right there, you know. But if Ethan Hawke's surge does continue, let's just say, and he does win the SAG, Oscar voting's open. They see him win the SAG. They saw the BAFTA speech that Aramayo gave. A lot of them probably know Ethan Hawke. Great career, right? Should have an Oscar by now. I would say pretty easily. Everybody would probably be on board with that. That could be dangerous. If Ethan Hawke wins the SAG, you might want to predict him to win the Oscar. Really. And honestly, I don't know what I'll do, because Timothy would technically still be stronger from a basket haul, but momentum is always huge. I've said that a million times on these videos. When you do stats and you put all these spreadsheets and you do all this shit, you can't really measure momentum. You just can't. It's just a thing that's there. And I feel it right now for Ethan Hawke. So if I feel it in my garage on the East Coast, they feel it out there, trust me. And if Timothy has anybody breathing down his neck right now, I think it's Ethan Hawke. But what's funny about this category is all of these dudes from top to bottom, Michael B. Jordan, we talked about Leo and Wagner, and of course the top two right now, they're all competitive to win this. This was going to be fairly quick and easy too. I mean, this is Paul Thomas Anderson. I know in the last couple of weeks or so, a lot of people have been toying with the idea of Ryan Coogler upsetting here because he is so beloved in the industry, and I agree with that, and I also love him, and I think it would be an awesome win, honestly. But, I mean, PTA's got this. I mean, PTA is the R-Tour 14-time nominated storyteller of our generation that does not have an Academy Award. I mean, even if they're not over the moon about one battle, how many more opportunities are they going to have to really give him this prize for director? He's already going to have screenplay, which I think is a no-brainer, and I feel the same way about director. And I really hope they don't let him down and they do give this to him. I really do. You know, Ryan Coogler would be an inspired win, and I wouldn't be mad if he won it, but I just think PTA is too strong. I mean, he's got the DGA, he just got the BAFTA, you know, Globe. I mean, he hasn't lost. He's hit everywhere. We're going to go to the Best Picture slide next, which I think it's the Best Picture winner. So you got to go with PTA here. All right, last but not least on this video is Best Picture, of course. This is one that's up for debate, okay? I will give you guys that, especially the Sinners fans out there. You know, there is a world where Sinners can win this. I think it's probably a bit more of a long shot than some people might be anticipating. Now, that could all change really quickly, but as of today, the 24th of February, and definitely before we get the SAG results this weekend, and of course PGA will kind of be the final like pitch that's thrown off the mound. I always give the sports analogies. Raise your hand if you like sports and you understand my analogies. But they're going to tell us a story, right? Which is what I mentioned before. And I'm going to show you guys the basket for these two movies in a second. I moved Hamnet and Frankenstein up a spot, actually. And the reason being is because I had sentimental value, I believe, at 3 last week on the power rankings, but it really underperformed at the BAFTAs. It was really kind of shocking to me, honestly. For Best Picture, I mean, honestly, you know, we could probably actually move on to that, because right now I don't think there's really anything else to say before we get those final precursors. Now, I can throw hypotheticals at you all day long, and my buddy Eric was on Twitter, I believe it was yesterday or the day before, after the BAFTAs, and he put up a tweet that I just started laughing out loud, because he's like, man, people are really doing some mental gymnastics to make these scenarios happen. We just don't need to do that yet. And I'm not even saying that anybody's wrong. You know, like I said, there is a path for Sinners to win. It is hypothetical, because right now, the clear front runner in the Best Picture race, in my opinion, is one battle after another. You know, PTA is going to get director and he's going to get screenplay. I think he's going to have an acting prize, at a minimum one of them, with Sean Penn. He could also end up getting Teyana Taylor if my win me prediction does not come true. So maybe even 2 acting wins, and really possibly a 3rd if you think Leo is win competitive. So very strong case can be made for Best Picture for one battle after another. Not so strong for Sinners. Historically, on what they've done so far on the circuit, yes, even though the movie has performed really well. You know, it broke the record for nominations, 16, I understand that, which does illustrate that there's a lot of love for the movie. But those are nominations. You know, those are like, thank you for the film. You know, we think it's one of the 5 best in whatever these categories are. But it hasn't gotten the gold yet. It hasn't gotten the #1 prize yet. There's a lot of situations around the circuit, And I know we only really have a couple major televised precursors, but they've gone to one battle. You know, even at the Golden Globes, I was actually worried that Sinners was going to end up getting that box office achievement bullshit and not Best Picture drama. I think they deserve the box office award, although that's hard to really say because I don't really know what it is. But anyway, it did great at the box office, and it is very cinematic. So by that rationale, sure, it should win that. But yeah, Hamnet got the drama, which is like the real Globe, if you will. And then, of course, One Battle pretty easily got the musical or comedy one. So that would have started the season, the televised season, off completely differently if Sinners had gotten drama like it probably should have, even though I love Hamnet, and One Battle would have gotten musical or comedy, because then they're both Golden Globe winning pictures, right? And then the season kind of spirals the way it goes. And even if PTA had won, you know, Critics' Choice, BAFTA, whatever, Coogler still has the Drama Globe, which is a pretty good precursor. But I'll tell you what's not a great precursor is cinematic box office achievement. All right, so I do this thing called the basket, and I talked about it a little bit earlier, but basically it's just like, what's your haul at the Oscars? What do you have? What are you putting in that basket throughout the night that's going to then give you that hall pass to get up from your table and go onto the stage to accept Best Picture? If it's in green, that means I think this is a prediction that I'm making currently, and I'm talking about for the Academy Award, that I'm not changing. Now, the PGA could get me to change some of this, but assuming the PGA goes to One Battle After Another is what this green is. So let's start over with One Battle. So like I said, it's going to have screenplay. In this category, it'll be adapted. It's going to have director for PTA. I think that's a sure thing. And now I also am pretty confident in saying that it's going to have editing. I would say anything in the green that you see on the slide is like an 80% chance or better that it's going to have that prize on Oscars night. I'm saying the same thing for supporting actor. Now, let me touch on that real quick because you see Wunmi Misaki on the other side for Sinners, and this commentary goes with both. The only kind of bump in this predictive path that I'm making here is if, and really only if, Jacob Elordi was to win the SAG, or the Actor Award, for Frankenstein. If Jacob Elordi wins that, then you're going to have to flip a coin, basically. It'll go from, in other words, it'll go from 80% for Sean Penn to like 50. Be a 50-50, right? It could go to Elordi on the strength of the SAG, mostly, but also the Critics' Choice Award. If anybody else in that category gets it, Stellan Skarsgård's not there. He's really the main competition for Sean Penn, if you ask me, but he's not there. So if Benicio gets it, it doesn't affect Sean Penn winning. So I'm leaving that put in the green, although it would go to the yellow if Jacob Elordi won the SAG. The ones that are in yellow are like possible, like they're really, really close to that 80% threshold of locking it in, but they're not quite there yet. And the thing with this is these are the categories that you're going to have to like make a prediction because you're not really going to have any other precursors to tell you what's going on outside of the SAG Awards. Because, you know, of course, PGA is more so for like the production, the film, not necessarily acting. So cinematography, casting, and sound, I think are, like I said, not 80 in my head, maybe in that 60 to 70 range, though, for those three categories going to One Battle After Another. If I had to predict right this second, those would be my predictions in that category. Casting is on the other side, and so is cinematography for Sinners. I think One Battle has a better shot at cinematography based on what's been happening lately with the BSC. It won the BAFTA. So those two back-to-back was kind of a gut punch for Sinners. And I actually really, really like the cinematography in Sinners. I know some people have been complaining about the shadows and the nighttime sequences and all that shit. Until I heard that critique a couple weeks ago, I didn't really even think about that. I love it. I'm a horror fan, so maybe it was just normal to me. But I just think with the fall off, the rolling hill race car scene that PTA is doing in One Battle, a lot of other things too, that it's in the running, probably sitting right around 70% likelihood to win cinematography. I also think it's the sound winner, unless F1 takes that. Now, the editing and sound correlation used to be really, really strong, and it's kind of fallen off a little bit in the last few years. It still seems like they go hand in hand. They just kind of keep getting split ever since they split the sound categories, and it's not as consistent, if you will. I think this could be a year where it does split. So I think it could be editing for One Battle, and it could be sound for F1. And this is my prediction, so this is obviously not, gospel. But worst case scenario, I think One Battle After Another is going to have 4 Oscars leading into the Best Picture announcement. On the other side, Sinners, and even the ones I have in green, are not definitive for the masses, for the populace. Wunmi Misaki, I think, is 80% or more going to be supporting actress. Again, I talked about this earlier when I did that slide. The only reason I would come off of that, personally, between now and making my final predictions, if Teyana Taylor wins the SAG. And you see I have her in yellow on the left side. So that could flip. Basically supporting actress could go yellow on Sinners and it could go green on One Battle in like 4 days. If Wound Me wins the SAG, then of course I'm predicting her, and you should too. But we won't know that, and that's still a bit of a I'm shooting a half-court shot at the last second. Another sports analogy. Jesus. And then, like I said, casting is probably closer to turning green for Sinners than it is for One Battle. But that could really go either way, in my opinion. And they had cinematography locked up until a couple weeks ago, I thought. And it's been dropping off. ASC's coming up. And that could be a big one for them if they're able to pull that off. And then maybe that one turns green for them too. And I mean, let's be honest, I'm not going to get every single one of these right. You see how there's 7 things in green here on the screen? If all 7 of these that you're looking at panned out to be right, this could go all out the window if Sinners win SAG Ensemble this weekend and then the PGA the following weekend. I don't think it's going to. So that's why I'm not hypotheticals and mental gymnastics like my buddy said. Right now, I would have no problem predicting Sinners to win SAG Ensemble, and I would have no problem predicting Sinners to win PGA. I think that it's possible that it could win either of those. I just have a hard time thinking that it would win both of them with the success that One Battle's been having in the last couple months on the circuit with a lot of similar voting bodies. It would just seem kind of out of nowhere. It really would seem like an Honora situation where Sean Baker just won everything that weekend. And everybody was like, oh, okay, well, it's Honora, And that's what would happen. Everybody would go, oh, okay, well, I guess it is Sinners for Best Picture, if all that shit started happening. I actually, in the Award Expert app, I think yesterday, and you can quote me on this because I'm probably going to end up changing it 4 or 5 more times before Sunday, but I think I changed to One Battle at SAG Ensemble too, because I was looking at the nominations there, and I was looking at the historical data for the SAG Ensemble Award, and I was like, who's going to win at the SAG for acting, right? Which right now is both of them. So then, if my prediction's right, so I got Sean Penn winning, and I have Wunmi Masaki winning. So if that ends up happening, then you can't really even use that as a stat. So then you go, okay, well, what movie got the most nominations for acting, right? And it's One Battle. So, if Delroy had gotten in there, that'd be a different story, or even Haley Steinfeld for that matter. She fizzled out in the early part of the season, but she was thought to be a possible player, previous Oscar nominee. I just think One Battle's stronger, and I think that a lot of folks out there, and I actually did it for a few days myself, but I think a lot of folks out there, particularly like fans of Sinners, it was their favorite movie or whatever, are really trying to figure out how this can happen. And I'm not saying it can't happen, and I'm not trying to, deflate anybody's hopes or whatever. I just think that the more obvious analysis is that One Battle is steamrolling to Oscars night. I think we're in a situation where I've only got it winning 4 here. Well, if you count Best Picture, I've only got it winning 5. There's a world where it could win like 8 or 9 Oscars. Maybe more. It's nominated for 13. Sinners is nominated for 16. Everybody's going to say that, right? Unfortunate for Coogler and Sinners, I just don't think, because they're the number 2 in a ton of categories. Most likely, the runner-up in a bunch of categories. They got 16 nominations, and even I'm throwing them a bone and giving them Wound Me for supporting actress, Masaki. I'm like one of only 4 people that are doing that. I've been doing it, since January. So even that's me reaching my hand out to that film when a lot of people are saying that's not the most likely scenario. But you look at it, I've got it winning casting, which I had on that other slide as being in yellow, but even if it gets that one, right? But it's in 2nd or 3rd place in editing, production design, costume design, makeup. That's all Frankenstein. Visual effects are not as strong as we thought it was based on a lot of the guilds and the precursors there. Plus, you've got Avatar in that category, so even if it was really strong, I don't think Avatar is going to lose. It's in 2nd place for original song, right? That's K-pop Demon Hunters, It's going to win score. It's probably in 2nd place. Maybe some people can make an argument 1st place for casting, but it could even be in 2nd place for casting. And I think all of that just tells me without overthinking it, and I'm not even saying I have a horse in the race, I'm trying to put it into perspective that the 16 nominations doesn't mean it's going to win 13, 14 Oscars. It's in categories, in those 16 categories, at least 8 or 10 of them, at least half of them, if not more, they're in the runner-up spot. They're just not going to win. Anything they're up against Frankenstein in those technical categories, they're not going to win unless it's a shocker. Cinematography, they're probably not going to win unless ASC goes out for them and shows us a different tale. Right now, the tale is telling us they don't like that. Cinematographers in the industry are not going out for that. Original song, you can't beat K-pop Demon Hunters, Golden. That's the song this year. If it does, that would be inspired, and I would be thrilled, but I'm not going to predict that. K-pop, that's like a phenomenon. Even folks that went to see Sinners in theaters that aren't huge award season junkies might not even know what I Lied to You is. They might not even remember it from the movie, with the exception of that, music montage or whatever. I mean, the actual music, the song, the lyrics, whatever. K-pop Demon Hunters, your great-grandmother knows what that is. I mean, everybody knows that. So you have to predict that. So Sinners is in second there. So the only categories, if you really think about it, that Sinners is not in second place and is almost surefire in first place is original score, original screenplay. And that's it. I've got it getting supporting actress, but that's me being like, I think Wunmi Masaki is going to win this. Nobody else is really saying that. If you want to say casting, I'll give it to you. Go ahead. If you want to say casting, that's original screenplay, original score, and casting. That's it. So if Wunmi pulls off the victory, which I'm still going to probably predict her to do that unless the SAG does something with Teyana, that's 4 Academy Awards for a 16-time nominated film, which is actually not bad. It's going to seem bad, right? Because that's a pretty small percentage. But you got to take a step back. And you got to go, yeah, it got 16 nominations, but, Frankenstein's going to win all this, and it can't beat K-pop, and One Battle's too strong here, and, the acting's a toss-up, so they could win it, they could not win it. I'm rambling, but I want to try to explain myself because unlike a bunch of pundits that I actually know personally and I love them and I watch their videos after I do mine, and, I'll be listening to their commentary, which makes sense a ton of the time. But unlike most of those folks, I go on a hunch with everything until we get to the week of the Oscars. And a lot of people, and God love you, I was an idiot, I was dumb, I don't know what I'm doing, cancel your channel, like all kinds of shit I saw in my comments from haters, if you will, because I had chosen Wunmi Masaki to win supporting actress in late January. And everybody's like, why are you doing that? That's not going to happen. I said, well, if the momentum continues to go up for Sinners, and if she can pull off the BAFTA with her British blah, 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 and I gave all these criteria, and then she did that, okay? And that was the first thing that needed to happen. So now she just needs Teyana to not win the SAG. And I think that momentum and the fact that they are going to want to pick the spots where Sinners is the ultimate prize in those categories. I love Teyana Taylor, but for me in that category, especially since Ariana's not there and other folks, Odessa's not there, those folks missed. For me, it's Wunmi Masaki, okay? Now, I'm not the Academy, and that's my opinion, and it's all subjective. I understand that. So I'm not going to argue or tell you that you're dumb if you're picking somebody else or if your favorite is Teyana. That's great. I love Teyana. So I'm different in that regard. I don't need to be right either. I don't need to be right. I try to be, and, I have people DMing me to help them make picks. And I love that shit, and I want to be accurate. As a YouTuber, as a pundit on the award space, is like my 3rd official year doing it. This is the most following I've ever had. My members are terrific. My channel regulars are terrific. But I just want to tell you guys at the same time, and I've said this since I started doing early predictions in April of last year, we don't know. I don't care how much somebody's an expert or works at Gold Derby or has 300,000 followers, or they don't know, okay? Now, they might have an educated guess to get pretty close and to have a really good argument for a film or a performance based on historical data and the feelings on the circuit and talking to people in movies and all that shit. And I take a lot of that into consideration too, and respect a lot of people that do that. So I'm not talking down to it. I'm just saying that's not how I do it. I do it based on hunch and how I feel about what I'm hearing, what I'm seeing, especially when I see these speeches and watch these shows and the news stories and the Twitter and like the vibes, that's what I go on. When we get to the week of the Oscars and we've got all that shit for the most part, precursor wise, then it becomes an analytical statistic like breakdown. Because right now you can't say any of it. You can't say, well, Sinners is going to win Best Picture because it got SAG Ensemble and PGA. You can't say that right now because it didn't get them yet. Do you see what I'm saying? Now, if that's your prediction and that's your hunch, which is what I'm saying I promote, then I'm all for it. And I'm sorry about the ramble session at the end of the video. I've got one more of these Power Rankings videos coming up next week, hopefully with a very special guest that's actually never been on the channel before. And I am thrilled if I can get this dude on the channel because I love him. We're just talking about people I respect in the industry. And what's so funny about that is that the guest I might have on next week, I disagree with a lot of his current predictions, right? But he's giving criteria and the resumes for these performances and movies that he thinks is going to prevail that I understand. And he's using his hunch to give a different outcome than what my hunch is telling me. But my point is still clear, is that neither one of those hunches is right until it is, right? And right now, they are just hunches, okay? One might seem more likely than another because of what's going on out there in the awards world, but let's be nice to each other, and people will hit me in my comments so GD fast about, my predictions especially. And this is fun for me. I don't want it to not be fun for me, right? I am going to try to be extremely accurate. And I've always said that the closer we get to that Oscars date, and the same thing was true with nominations, the closer we got to nominations week, the more accurate I think I became, right? And I think the same thing is hopefully going to happen with the Academy Awards, the ceremony, because, last year I went 20 for 23. That's not bad, guys. And I was one of very few, and my members back me up on live streams and stuff, that had a Nora in May, Mikey Madison in May or June, right? Never changed it. I was tempted to, and I was scared of Demi Moore momentum and coming up, right? But I had that hunch, and there was nothing happening out there in awards world that would supersede the strength of my hunch. Perfect example, and how I'll swallow my pride, is the exact same thing happened last year with Ariana Grande. I had her as my hunch and my winner in supporting actress. My heart too, but all season. It was like the week that Wicked came out, so that was in November, mid-November. Ever since then, she was my number one pick for supporting actress. As soon as I saw that performance, I said, this is it. They're going to give her this because it's deserving, first of all, but also because she has the star power. The songs were bangers. It's a beloved musical. Made a shit ton at the box office. She's going to win this. There's no reason for Zoe, in a far inferior film that people were pissed about, should be winning every single televised award. So let's give Ari, the SAG or the BAFTA, and then she comes into the Oscar and takes it. And that's the flip side for Mikey Madison. That was my hunch, and I stayed with it all the way through SAGs, which was last year was the last award before they voted. She lost the BAFTA. Then the last one comes along. I'm like, all right, this is it. This is our last stand. She lost the SAG. I was wrong. My hunch was wrong. I knew I couldn't predict her to win the Oscar. That would have been unprecedented, right? Because she didn't win anywhere else, and there was a sweeper. So that would have just been foolish, even though I wanted it to happen. That would have been foolish to predict her at that point, right? So I, am kind of standing up for myself, and kind of defending myself at some of the hateful things I see in the comments and, on Twitter and online and stuff, and not even, I'm talking about for me, but I see it towards other people too. And just because somebody else's prediction, I'm not talking about me right now, because I can take it. I do this channel, or otherwise I would have quit a long time ago. But just because somebody else's prediction is not yours, or because it's for a movie or performance that you didn't care for, or you didn't think should get nominated, then that's okay. Click next, you know what I mean? Or if you want to, click thumbs down, that's fine. But that doesn't mean they're wrong, right? It just means we have a difference of opinion, I don't like the Kate Hudson nomination, right? But if you predict Kate Hudson to win, I'm not going to show up in your comment section. That's just not how I roll, you know what I mean? I might think you're wrong as I'm watching the video or listening to the podcast. Like, what the fuck is this guy talking about? But I'm saying that to myself. I respect your opinion. And if maybe you end up being right, and maybe Kate Hudson wins, and I go, wow, holy shit, I'm going to really pay attention to, Joe Bob, whoever, next time, because I can't believe he called that, which is kind of what I did with Wound Me and last year with Mikey, and it's a game. It really is. It's a game. It's sports. It's funny with the analogies. It's a version of sports gambling, maybe not with money. Some people might, but I don't. But thank God, I'd be broke as shit right now. But, I'm sorry for the ramble session at the end. Hopefully, I'll probably chop this up and edit a lot of this out of it. One more Power Rankings video next week, hopefully with that special guest I was mentioning to you. And then the following week, we'll be doing it all over again, but it's going to be for all 24 categories. And it is going to be my final locked-in predictions for what I think is going to win at the Academy Awards. With that being said, I'm going to tag it on this video for you, but I did a long project where I took notes and watched all of the Oscar-nominated shorts this year, all 15 of them. I usually do that every year, but I don't always get a chance to do it before I need to make the predictions. So you can check out my full breakdown where I give a mini review of all 15 movies, and I do also give you my predictions on why I think the short is going to win in each of those 3 categories. Make sure you subscribe, and if you are into channel memberships, our growth has been crazy. Thank you guys so much. In the past few days, I passed 65 members, and I'm trying to give you guys perks too and have you be there with me, right, to help me go through these hunches and brainstorm. And then when the Oscars happen, we start doing it all over again. I've actually already started doing it for 2027. If you want to help me do all that stuff and research and have time to edit and write scripts and do everything else, it means the world to me for as little as a couple bucks a month. Or as one of my buddies said, he looks at it as buying me a beer once a month, which is great because I need that too, believe me. You guys are the best, and thanks for tuning into this Power Rankings video. We'll do it all again next week, and my Screen Actors Guild or the Actor Awards predictions will be on the channel for members probably already, but for the general public on Friday. Let me know what you think is going to win, and let me know what you thought of these power rankings down below. I will see you out here next time in the garage.